Ladies and gentlemen, YouTube, Dr. Doom reporting live, minus the time it takes me to upload this video, from his laundry room. Yeah. Okay. Been thinking about these little rioting and chaos in the Middle East basically spreading like wildfire, and started thinking to myself, wildfire, chaos spreading like wildfire. That word was in the Webbot report, but I thought it had to do with America, not the Middle East. So I went ahead and opened up the old Webbot report. Now remember, this one was published, this is the latest one, which was from somewhere around January, I think 25th of 2011. And it's interesting because some of the parts of where it talks about that kind of seems like it's the Middle East, but at the same time, we already know that stuff's coming here to our own country. You're already seeing it take place in Ohio and Wisconsin about their pensions and that kind of thing. That's just a walk in the park. That's nothing compared to what's coming. So I want to, and I got the Webbot open. There's a few pages I want to read. I may have read some of these pages a while back when well, not that long ago, whatever, about a month ago when I did a report on the Webbot report, the latest one. I don't know if I read all these particular pages that I'm going to read, or just some of them, or none of them. I don't remember. But it starts off, this says, Populous US of A, Transition into Reformation. The latest data sets for the Populous US of A entity are clearly indicating a break with the past that will be arriving very close to the vernal equinox of March 21st usually. This break with the past is filled with language about dollar death, and from the point of view of the data in these future days of spring 2011, the dollar death language is focused on the morbidity while standing at home. The supporting data in this subset has the view that the dollar as a global reserve currency has already died and is buried / discarded. From these supporting sets comes the view of the dollar as an international currency being in severe distress within the national economic infrastructure. The data accretion patterns that begin in late February and ramp up rapidly through early March are the dominant component to national expressions of daily life here in the US of A by midsummer. The longer-term data values show a continuation of the destruction of civil life and collective history through all of summer, fall, and into the winter of 2011/2012. The destruction of civil life subset contains repeated references to civil unrest and riots, as well as armed insurrection. This last is cross-linked extensively to the powers that were and markets entities. Within the destruction of civil life subset are the previously described in past Webbot reports instances of mob action that results in the burning alive of minions and the power elites and their families. I remember this from the older Alta Webbot report. A lot of detail in that one, by the way. It was pretty interesting to see if it actually plays out that way. And it went on to talk about politicians and these minions and that being pulled out of their burning house, or running out of their burning houses, only to be grabbed by people and thrown back in because so many people are just so insanely furious, and sets them on fire. It even went on to talk about how they would set some of these housing on fire. I'm talking about the older, like 2 years ago plus Webbot report. And it said that people would find some kind of like, not a Molotov cocktail, but like a little wax ball type of thing that you can throw on the house. I don't know if they light it first and then throw it. I think they throw it and then just set one of them on fire, and it just kind of spreads. And they're kind of like a Molotov cocktail / lava thing that just does a really good job of setting something on fire and staying on fire, I guess. That's going to be used. If the old Webbot report is actually very accurate in that when it comes. Who knows? Okay, so let me just start with that last sentence, because it talks about the whole incident, and it's all capital letters, HOLE, and I think it stands for something, and he said it did, but he wasn't going to go into detail, and said it would be clearly obvious when it happens what the whole incident was. So, okay, within the destruction of civil life subset, there are within the destruction of civil life subset are the previously described in past Webot reports, instances of mob action that result in the burning alive of minions and power elites and their families. The whole incident will act as a spark to spreading contagion. Additional note, from the words to be used by the political minions. So spreading contagion is the word that will be used by the political minions. That is indicated to start a riot in an urban area north of Washington, D.C. It says north of D.C. That will itself spread like fire. The data sets are showing a lot of support for the riots subset through spring and summer. But the mother of all riots does not appear within our data sets until later in whole, H-O-L-E, capitalized. At that time, the inclemency of the weather has cleared, and the spark begun, then leaps across state boundaries and spreads out through the corridors. These act as viaducts that in turn take the riot from population center to population center, such that the minions in officialdom are unable to comprehend the manifesting developments. That is, they just don't get it. By the time the mother of all riots, or by the time of the mother of riots, many individual incidents of civil disobedience, riots, planned civil actions, and other innovative protest arts, I can't wait to see what that really means, have dominated the media, including some reports on the mainstream, but far more within the alternative media, over spring and summer. The primary motivators coming from the supporting sets, including the detail layers, point toward the hyperinflation of food prices, the lack of work, the massive layoffs, the collapse of the banking systems, the sporadic electrical outages lasting for days, the empty food shelves, the worthless vouchers/cards for money from government. The data has numerous details of diverse descriptors, all of which pretty much lumped under "we're broke, we're hungry, we've been raped, and we are pissed." The "we've been raped" meme arises from supporting sets going to the idea of the rape of Social Security and the rape of retirements that the powers that were and their minions are going to accomplish through hyperinflation. Over late winter 2010/2011 and early spring 2011, the beggaring of the populace will be accompanied by reports of die-offs that will continue for months. It may take a few months before the propaganda press outlets begin to report the actual levels. However, the data sets indicate that the populace will be aware of the trend. This dying at the fringes of health society capacity is in the supporting sets that provide for mental pressures on a moment-by-moment basis that is in support of the madness of mobs subset, which feeds the riots subsets. Now keep in mind, yes, it did say 2011, and it's talking about in the near-term future. And I have to remind you, with the wild Colleen, there's been several other things that the Webot called, oh, it should be here shortly. Month went by, 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, 6 months, a year, boom. All of a sudden, wild Colleen appeared. There was a couple other times that something like that occurred. So, while it's in there what they consider their immediacy data, which means any day now, very soon, wild Colleen was at least a year out. I think it was more than that. And then she came into the picture all at once, along with 2 other little precursor events right in line, just perfectly. So, that's interesting, but keep in mind, yes, I know it said 2011, but I've already witnessed it multiple times, say a date or time frame, and then it goes by, and then it happens. Exactly how they said it would happen, just not when they said it would happen. So, the way I've been treating the Webot reports for a while now is listen to the message, listen to the kind of timeline that these things point out, because there's definitely a timeline here where you can say when this and this and this happened, well, then that and that and that and that's going to happen. And that's kind of how Lindsey Williams' timeline have always been by the elite, because they didn't actually give him a date, normally. they would always just tell him, well, we're going to do this, then we're going to do that, then we're going to do that, and then it just happens. So, and he'd always said that, they don't tell me specifically. And then in maybe early 2010, he came out and actually said, the first time I ever remember him saying, oh, by the way, by the time we reached 2011, my elitist friend, which then was Ken Fromm, his buddy Ken Fromm, who has since died, as we know, told him by 2011, the dollar will lose 30 to 50% of its value. Now, if you look at the price of gold and silver, that is absolutely correct compared to the dollar. If you look at the price of a lot of main staples of food that have gone significantly up, you could say 30 to 50%, or maybe it's right at 30, whatever it is, whatever it ended up being. Man, that's pretty accurate. Here we are with gas prices skyrocketing again. Oh, but that's the Middle East, that's the Middle East. I don't care what you say. Look at the facts. Look at what's in front of you. These things are all skyrocketing. Lindsey William pretty much got that one. Even if it wasn't by January 1st, 2011. Okay, now we're in March 1st, and it's pretty blatantly obvious now that Lindsey was right about the death of the dollar, losing 30 to 50%. Gold and silver are up more than that compared to, the same time last year or whatever. So, I mean, he was right. But that was the first time he ever gave a timeline. The Webber reports usually always give a timeline. And sometimes they're spot on the money, sometimes they're not. But, that's what I say. You got to take this stuff, I'm not going to say with a grain of salt, because a lot of this stuff's going to happen. Take the dates with a grain of salt, basically, is what I should be telling you. Because, we skated through 2011, and there's a couple little, not really riots, but whatever. And then all of a sudden 2012 comes, and it's, March of 2012, and now all this stuff just gets thrown on us all at once, rapidly. I don't know. I'm just telling you, listen to the timeline. Sometimes when they give dates, it could be a killer of, that date already came and went, I'm not listening to it, it's nonsense. And then it happens later, but because it didn't happen by the date they said it would, you just write it off. That's stupid to do that. You need to keep this stuff at least, very least, in the back of your mind. Try to remember some of these important things. Write it down, whatever you need to do. Put it in your little calendar on your computer. Go look at it, have it set a reminder to look at society and see if any of these things have taken place, every month or something. I can't keep up with all this stuff myself. I have to keep little notes and stuff just to see. And I go back and find stuff. Like today I'm reading this, and a lot of this is starting to sound like we're definitely close, to what's going on here, fixing to come. So, it says, of note is that previously described in past author reports, riots in Maryland in which the exposure of secret underground bases occurs is now filling rapidly. So that should be happening sometime soon, in the near future, I'm assuming. The starving mob riots here in the US of A, in which governmental infrastructure is located and looted, are also temporally linked to starvation riots that will sweep through Italy and break out into the open. The starvation riots throughout Europe have been described in previous reports as leading to a pitched battle that will crash through the minions of the sorcerers / Swiss Guard and lead to the looting of the palace of the sorcerers, aka the Vatican. As in the descriptors for the liberation of foods from the deep underground bases in Maryland, the liberation of the Vatican will also tangentially expose the secret shadow government. In both instances, the data sets indicate that text and photographs and videos that have been long hidden by the minions will become public property at a planetary level. Note that the number of retrieved or recovered subsets in support of information and the public domain rise exponentially as we move forward from spring through summer. The number of releases of once hidden information during this time, and in spite of the global chaos of food shortages and crashing currencies and collapsing governments, is indicated to lead directly to backyard / garage / apartment researchers to make rapid progress in both devices and methods across a wide range of interests. Should terrain humanity make it through these next few years, it will be the exposures and liberation of knowledge that takes place in the chaos of the food riots of 2011 that will act as the catalyst for the technical renaissance of the species. This interpretation is based on the assumption that the hidden civilization that grew from the American national security state on the last century does not decide to emerge and expose themselves. No, not that way. There are a number of data sets that can be interpreted as describing chaos across the planet that is so widespread and disruptive to necessary supplies that it forces the unveiling of the hidden civilization in this year. It is worth noting that even if this interpretation does manifest, it will be the food riots and resulting governmental collapse that triggers the hidden civilization to try a planetary takeover. The impacts of the dollar currency collapse are showing as reaching visibility within the mainstream media, aka propaganda press, by March, but reported with a focus on the symptoms rather than the diseases, parasitism by the hidden civilization and corruption by the minions / powers that were. Without regard to their reports, at that time, the propaganda press will find that it is being attacked in ways both personal and collective. The beat up upon press minions will be so taken aback at being taken out back for a beating that they will alter how reporting and presentation of officialdom propaganda, aka TV news, occurs in the US of A. There are several such incidents that will make the alternative media headlines over late March and escalating through spring and summer. Now, we've already had that lady sexually assaulted in Egypt during the rioting over there. We had that, whatever his name is, I forget his damn name, who was there before her, news guy, punched in the face or punched in the head. Although this is, again, specific to America. So those are just little blips, like I always say, of things that I'm seeing that are in the Webbot report, but not quite a hit. It's starting to lean towards it, and it's kind of gearing you up. Okay, it kind of matches, but not really, because that's in Egypt. We're in America, so it's not really a hit. But the same thing's going to happen here, and it's going to be a lot more specific and a lot more detailed than that. A little head punch in the head, or even the sexual assault. This is talking about, taking a guy out back for a beating. They're going to be chasing some of these guys down in this country, and making them pay physically, apparently, from this report. The data sets in support of the death of the dollar theme in the populous US of A entity are large and dominating and growing through much of 2011. The idea coming across is of a twisting in agony and suspended in morass as the population tries to work through the grief process, beginning with the hyperinflation of food prices at the retail level. Additional note, likely within 3 weeks of this report publication. We're actually at approximately 4 weeks of that publication. So, how's food prices real recently treating you? How's the gas prices, of course, treating you? Yeah. But again, gas prices going up equals food prices going up. Gas prices going up equals everything prices going up. So that's pretty interesting for him to say, beginning with hyperinflation of food prices at the retail level, which we've all been talking about lately. There's all kinds of crap, record-breaking stuff on mainstream news even about these record food prices and certain things. Important food items, not just some piece of crap cereal or something. Wheat, corn, important stuff. So beginning with the hyperinflation of food prices at the retail level, likely within 3 weeks of this report, and at a regional level, the dollar death woes begin to impinge upon the limited conscious mind time of the average citizen, aka the sheeple. The data indicates that once the process of intrusion of dollar demise / hunger begins, there will be two simultaneously spreading effects. First, a triggering of a more general awakening to manifesting circumstances, aka reality, realist news, right? I report, within the sheeple herd. And second, the rise in visibility of many, if not most, of the woo-woo educators, specifically, and members of the woo-woo generally. Stated another way, once the shock of the recognition of fundamental change, in other words, reality punching your mouth loose, like I always talk about, when that occurs as a direct result of the dollar death woes producing changes in daily life, the leading edge of the vast herd of sheeple will attempt to self-educate themselves. How did this happen? I'm dealing with it now. There's no way. Everything I've read, all the experts, all the news, they're telling me this is not supposed to happen. It did happen. Oh my God. Now it's affecting me. It's not just that, oh, I have a job, so I'll just not pay attention to that. Well, you eat food, don't you? You have to pay attention to the price, right? Well, yeah. But, so you can talk about that to people. How about that gas tank? How's that? Oh, you drive a big, giant Hummer, a Humvee. You're the badass in town. You got the big Hummer, right? Yeah, yeah. Oh, how's that working out for you with gas prices? Yeah, it's not. So, that's the reality. Okay, my gas prices suck. And my food prices suck. And I just lost my job. And I just got a demotion. I'm coming in, they're closing the doors early. I'm not getting my full hours at work. Oh, and my water bill's higher. Oh, yeah, my electric bill's higher. All of these things are hitting me. How could that be with an economic recovery that we were promised? We bailed out trillions of dollars worth of money, gave it to the banks. This wouldn't happen. It's not supposed to happen. You can't say, well, that's just my neighbor. It happened to him, not me. It happened to you now. So this is what they're talking about. The average sheep, like my sister, is going to get punched in the face with reality from all directions. You can only walk back into that corner so many times and just look the other way, and then reality creeps over there. I'll look this way. Reality creeps back over this way. I'll look up here. Reality's here, and it's getting closer and closer until it punches you in the face. And by the time it gets that close, it doesn't punch you in the face. It's like one of those old Bugs Bunny cartoons where Bugs Bunny and the bull's trying to, give Bugs Bunny the horn and chase him down. And Bugs Bunny, I think, takes a little rubber glove or a sock or something, puts a brick in there, and smacks the bull in the face with a brick. That brick is fixing to slap the sheeple, not just in this country. There's a lot of them here, trust me, but everywhere. It will slap them in the face and knock some teeth out. That's how much this reality is gonna hit them, and that's what they're talking about. So that at that point, there's no way I could have gone this far, been that blind. I'm a normal person. How did I not see this? And because I'm in so much pain of reality hitting me, I gotta see what the hell to do right now. Like, what's going on? Is it gonna get worse? So they start to self-educate themselves. That's the best way you could ever wake up. Having someone like Dr. Doom here hand you everything and, oh, yeah, I know, I'm hearing it. That's one thing. But when you actually go from being a sheeple to self-educating, it hits home a lot harder and different because you realize you came up with that analysis. You came up with that conclusion. Same conclusion Dr. Doom's been telling you for years now, of course, if you're one of my friends or family or whatever. And now you have to face it. So you can no longer say, Dr. Doom, why are you always talking bad? Why you always got bad stuff to say? Don't you have something nice to say? Isn't there something good? Unfortunately, no. If you're getting on the Titanic, and I'm from the future, and I know the Titanic, which is the unsinkable ship as it was described by the creators of it, and I come to you, listen, that ship you're going to get on is going to be in some freezing Arctic water, kill you in a few minutes if you're in the water. It's going to sink. I realize it's the maiden voyage. I realize it's the biggest, baddest ship ever built, during that time. But it's going to sink. And a good portion of the people are going to die, and a really good portion of the lifeboats are going to leave empty with nobody on them. So just, enjoy yourself on the ship, but, you got a little doom coming to you. Now, the average person would look at you and say, well, why do you got to be so negative? This didn't you hear them? This ship is unsinkable. It's the maiden voyage, for Christ's sakes. You tell me it's going to sink on the maiden voyage, the biggest ship ever built in this time. Come on, man. You're leave me alone. I want to enjoy my cruise. I don't need you telling me this stuff. That's nonsense. Or that's the response I used to always get from everybody. Always. And the way I'm thinking is, well, wait a minute. Just take that information. Use it. You'll be the first one to realize something's wrong when you hear that big kaboom. Ooh, we hit an iceberg. Yeah, we hit an iceberg, but I think we're okay. When you hear that, you'll automatically know, hey, Dr. Doom was right. Now I've got that doomy information that I didn't want to listen to, but it was useful information. Forget good or bad information. Information is information. He gave me good information. Now I'm going to make sure I'm on that first lifeboat. That one that's empty right there. If there's a bunch of empty lifeboats, family, my wife, kids, get over here now. Why are you guys putting the lifeboat? Why are you guys getting the lifeboat? Oh, we're just hanging out. We're just hanging out. We hit an iceberg and we're just a little nervous. Right? Everyone else goes back downstairs to party. you could use that information, that bad, doomy information, to make a good, positive, life-saving decision, by the way. How happy are you going to be when you get in that rowboat and they come save you from another ship and you go back to the dock and Dr. Doom's standing there? Hey, how'd that sinking of the Titanic work out for you? I guess my bad, terrible, dark information worked out for you pretty well, because you're back here, you're alive, your family's alive, and you live once again. How's that working out for you? I owe you an apology. I just, I didn't know. I just, blah, blah, blah. And then they go through the whole spiel. It's a typical, expectation. You were right. Yeah, wow, I should have listened. Well, that's the point I'm trying to make here with this information. It is worse than terrible, this information. If it's going to happen, just like a rainstorm, if there's a massive rainstorm and a tornado's coming, you're in the line of this tornado, in the path, it's going to hit you. Do you stand there and say, well, I'm not going to look that way. I'm going to look over this way where there's some sunshine that way. Forget the tornado, forget the massive storm. I don't care about that. I'm going to think positive, and let me open up my daily log of little one-liners and two-liners of happy nonsense thoughts that we used to send each other in emails every morning, the positive outlook thing, that whole nonsense. So, there's always that person that sends that stuff to try to cheer you up when reality's punching you in the face. And it's in good thought, good, reason that they do that, but there's certain times when things demand your attention. And this, for the last while now, demands all of our attention, and it's the only thing I could possibly report on. There's no good news out of this. There's none. In these web-out reports, which are, there is, you could say there's good news after the fact, when we rebuild society and rebuild something new. Yeah, that's good news, but no one wants to hear about the doom and gloom in between. So if I know it's coming, and I can point you in all directions to prove it's coming, it's already here, maybe you should prepare, right? Maybe you should stop telling me to stop being so doomy and gloomy and say, you know what, I'm going to take what you have to say a little more serious, and I might, start working on some of these things just in case. If you're wrong, eat the freaking food. If you're wrong, sell the silver. It's not going to go down to zero. It's not going to be worthless. Sell the gold and silver. Sell these things. It's not going to matter. If I'm right, you're in big trouble. If I'm wrong, nothing happens. Nothing changes. My life doesn't change. I have the same things I have. I live in the same place I live. And I could sell my silver if I wanted to. I could sell my food storage on eBay or something. But, people want to buy that stuff. You can find someone who wants to buy it. Or I'll just eat it just to help me save prices. I can't lose doing the things I'm doing and preparing. I'm just so sick of people talking about that nonsense. You're negative, nilly, negative this. No, I'm not. I'm presenting something to you that demands you look at it and study something, just a little bit of it, to understand what the hell's going on and what's coming and what this equals. After the fact, people are going to look back and say, oh God, it was so blatantly obvious. How could we believe that the U.S. dollar was the world's reserve currency and that it would just stay that way forever? Especially when we, tricked them into using our debt, buying our debt for 40 years, and then dumping the dollar on them when it's worthless, and all the stuff that they've collected over the past 40 years, treasuries and stuff, all that stuff's worthless. What did we think was going to happen to our dollar? What did we think would happen to food prices? What did we think would happen to oil? God, it's so obvious. And then all the people who would have fought you tooth and nail about these kind of things then will be so obvious. Oh, well, anyone could have predicted that, yeah. You're just lucky you're around, and you can say that. You would have never said that, a year ago or 2 years ago, looking back as if this already happened anyways. So, off my little rant, let me get back on the reality of this web-out report. So, stated another way, once the shock, of this thing hits them in the face, they're going to do a little self-educating. This natural response to a dissolving and no longer able to be supported view of reality is indicated to propel the general levels of visibility of the woo-woo to dizzying heights. P camels on the O channel, ? Maybe so. Strange damn universe apparently intent on surprising us all. The death of the dollar linguistic structure has grown remarkably over this last data collection period. So that data collection period was at the end of 2010, last couple of months, 2 or 3 months of 2010 basically, is what he's talking about. The primary supporting subset array is 400% larger than we left it. from the last one before that. And similar levels of growth have overlaid the secondary and tertiary support levels, and even larger growth rates within the detail layers. The projections for the growth of language in the propaganda press, mainstream media, around the dollar death meme should also grow as robustly from late January through to March. I have anyways been hearing about the dollar even on mainstream, where they're starting to talk about it, and the global currency, and you've got our own people coming out, in government talking about this, the SDR or whatever it is, the global thing, the IMF currency and that kind of thing, and I mean they're definitely talking about it in recent times. So it says through March, whereupon the language will begin to manifest locally within the US of A as the dollar death moves from the former concern of death as a global currency to internal use. The dollar death meme also has a number of aspect attribute sets in support of the secondary layers that go to the idea of claims that will be pressed on the minions at all financial levels and through lawsuits from foreign shores that will be simultaneous with the internal corruption of the dollar, which is also supporting the coagulation of flow sources into what is described as rigor mortis. Now, I just read an article today, and I think it was about JP Morgan. There are 10 or over 10,000 pressing lawsuits as well as class action suits against JP Morgan, and they went on to say, well, we don't know the numbers exactly, but Bank of America is another big one, Citi is another one, Wells Fargo is another one, but JP Morgan, they had the number of over 10,000. That's a lot of freaking lawsuits, in case you're wondering. And here it is in this report from January, and now the report came out today about JP Morgan having 10,000 people and or law firms, whatever, filing lawsuits. And then it went on to mention several other banks that are also having a massive influx of lawsuits. Here it is right here. Before that article came out, before that even took place in the Webbot report. So this is one of those things where it looks like the timing's right. But other things, the timing might not be right. So just take this report as kind of a timeline or just of things to look for in the near future. And that's really about it. As with all our work, when we encounter archetypes of this nature, we tend to take that area of the model very seriously, as body parts are very core level archetypes in human language. We also have post-death tremors and shaking in the veins, along with purging and bowel release and violent puking. Many of these descriptors have appeared in previous reports throughout 2010, and now continued support appears with the temporal markers for manifesting around withdrawal of dollar as foreign reserve. Now that these language sets have begun to manifest in the propaganda press, the temporal markers have been reached. The markers were indicated to be within the leading edge of the shorter term value sets, and so this language about dollar death within the USA are likely to be appearing within 3 months, or coincidentally, just about the time of the vernal equinox springtime, which I guess was March 21st, 22nd? And he mentioned that earlier. So I'll read this last paragraph, and that's really it. The detail sets for the dollar death internal to the populous US of A show a wide variety of effects ranging from violence to stupefaction/disbelief. Of a curious note is that the data accretion patterns for these aspect attribute sets are showing that a calm period, what can also be described as the grasping and gasping time, will exist for several days after the initial crash of the dollar-built structures. The patterns show that the populous US of A will have a bit of a freak out and then something of a holdfast as the national mood goes toward assessment. This shake it, bake it, and taste it period, in which the populous US of A will be dazed and confused. The accretion patterns continue thereafter with aspect attributes of return and homebound that are in support of the diaspora subset. The detail layers are pointing towards something of a shock for the powers that were and official dominions as the populace decides to get along home, wherever that may be. This general relocation is, from the point of view of the political minions and their masters, both unexpected and beyond control. The minion class subset sums up to some rather high levels of anxiety and disruption to plans around this relocation of the masses. Note that a lot of the masses will be children returning from schools and other institutions. I'm assuming like college. This subset is but one component in supporting the diaspora archetype growth in the populous US of A for 2011, with many of the social disorder subsets being fed by the death of the dollar, creating famine and food shortages as well as destroyed stores. It would be easy to assume that the dollar would be the primary problem facing the US of A. However, sadly, that is not to be the case. A hint arises from the sheer number of crosslinks between the populous US of A and the Terra, or Earth Change, entity. The level of crosslinks between the social disease and social order disruption in the populous US of A entity and the destructive weather in the Terra entity has never been this extreme. The populous US of A entity provides the descriptors for the impacts, while the Terra entity contributes the descriptors of the casual events. So, and I mentioned this before, I'm going to have to say that I know the powers that be are not going to be able to pull off, just like Lindsey Williams talking about oil's going to $200, they're going to collapse the US dollar, then they're going to try to pull out their one world currency, they're going to open up the reserves in the United States, oil reserves. We're still going to be paying $6, $7, $8 a gallon, even though we could have it for really $1 a gallon. I don't know that they'll get that far. They may get close, they may get that far, I don't know. It would be nice for Lindsey Williams to be wrong for once, which would be a very good sign that the ball is becoming in our court as people instead of the powers that be, and we are actually going to make some change happen. But when reading this Webbot report, you realize the change is going to happen, but it's not because people catch on and just decide, yeah, we've had enough of this. It's going to be dollar collapse, food shortages, food too expensive, earthquake caused a shutdown of a major road for transportation, flooding destroyed a bunch of crops, on top of the economic problems, on top of the dollar collapsing. And that's why I think the powers that be will have lost complete control, because they didn't plan for the monkey wrench that Mother Earth, right on time, cyclical event, has thrown their way. So, one more paragraph. Apparently, one of the most destructive events will be a series of floods. These floods are described as being food supplies impacting for several generations. There are repeated references to multiple flood centers. There are repeated references to multiple flood centers, and each is also defined as a center for some form of crop production. The impact levels for the flood archetype separated out to US of A geographic references goes out 4 generations, or 84 years. The flood linguistic here has supporting sets that describe the sites as being never flood and first time ever, as well as speech in shock over the pictures. So, we got a lot to deal with. Yes, 2012 is the right date. You may see things unfold potentially this year in which you think, man, maybe 2011 was the date. But I'm going to go with the ancient civilizations, Mayans, Aztecs, Egyptians, a bunch of others. 2012, December 21st, 2012 was the date. The Aztecs, or was it the Incas, one or the other, were the only one on the face of the earth that said, no, it's October 28th, 2011. Everybody else, every other civilization said, no, it's December 21st. Does it really matter that they're a year apart? No. You've already seen things take place now. It's not going to matter. It really isn't. Who's going to know which one was right? It doesn't matter. It's here. It's coming to get worse, etc. The sun is all of a sudden reacting way more violently for this time period than they thought it would be. Lots of M-class flares being predicted and happening, in frequency too. Lots of frequency of that type of stuff. That's not normal. And of course, active sun, active planet, active flooding, active raining, active snowing, heat, you name it, everything. So that's going to kill our food supplies too. Not just, now Lindsey Williams guy told them there'll be plenty of food on the shelves in America. There will be no food shortages in America. You might as well, because they'll be so expensive you won't be able to afford them. Now, while I believe that for all the right reasons, gas, oil, etc., going way up through the roof, dollar dying, etc., makes sense. But I don't think these guys, these oil guys, know or expect the type of earth change effects that are going to happen and really cause these problems to get out of control exponentially, which, because they do, starving people, rioting people, you name it, makes them lose control, which is one thing they didn't want to have happen. And that's at the point where I'm going to say there's no way they'll get their one world order and all that stuff. That's done. It's finished. Even if it started at some point, and there's a national ID card and there's some, it won't matter. Nothing's going to matter. Mortgages, not going to matter. Credit card bills, not going to matter. Debt, credit score, not going to matter. I've been saying that for a while, and as you can see, we're starting to lean towards that. With all these lawsuits on the banks, massive losses, business, I mean, it's just a matter of time. And especially when you have the world in chaos, no one's going to be paying bills when they have to feed their family. I mean, common sense. You're not going to care about your credit card. The last thing on your mind is going to be your mortgage. The first thing on your mind is going to be feeding your family. Plain and simple. And if everybody's at that level, they're not going to be foreclosing on everybody. They can't. They won't. So, that's all I got for you. Long video, as usual. I've tried to do them quickly, and then I find myself talking for days on YouTube. And anyways, I will talk to you guys later, and we'll just watch the world unfold as we've been expecting. You know, it's all you can do, and blog and YouTube about it. So anyways, take care.